Welcome to another episode of the Contagious Culture Podcast. I am your host, Kyle King, and today we have an amazing episode coming up because the goal of this episode is simple: to create an ecosystem of academic excellence. And through these inspiring conversations, practical insights, and actionable strategies, we ultimately help empower educators, change makers, and leaders just like yourself do one thing: create ecosystems of academic excellence. We want to be able to help you ultimately foster trust, collaboration, and build the resources so that we can ultimately impact the next generation of future leaders of our world. Today's guest is something short of amazing. I had a few minutes to talk to him backstage, and he's somebody that is not just an educator by trade, but is a writer that has leveraged his gift, his talent to be able to impact not just schools, but students around the world. He is a former principal and chief academic officer based in Florida, the Sunshine State, and he is sought after speaker and trainer in literacy best practices and high impact instructional strategies. Now, I don't want to take all of his thunder, so I'm going to bring him up and introduce Dan. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me today, Kyle. It's a pleasure being on with you.
I appreciate you so much. And, I always love reading people's bios because it sets the stage to the type of person from a professional side that we're going to get the opportunity to learn from today. But pulling back that professional titles, who are you as a person and why should people be ready for this episode?
Well, it's interesting you asked that question. I was really enjoying your intro about building systems and empowering folks. And I don't talk a lot about my background, but the short version is that I grew up as a child in a place of struggle, quite frankly, a fair amount of trauma in my family life. And I lost my mom when I was very, very young. And my brother and I recovered from that, well enough. Kids are a resilient sort, but my dad did not. And so there was a lot of struggle in my childhood that I don't talk much about. But as a result of that, we struggled as a family, and I struggled as a student, as a young man. And my schools, although I appreciate my teachers, I think never really recognized the degree of my struggle. And as a result, school wasn't a very successful experience for me. And that was in Pennsylvania, in the Pittsburgh area of Pennsylvania. And then we eventually moved down here to Florida. So I've spent my life giving back to kids who I relate to.
Exactly.
Which are kids like me, and to recognize their brilliance and lift them up and encourage them. And so that's been my background personally and then professionally as an educator.
I appreciate you even setting the stage with just so much vulnerability on the front end, because I think that a lot of times in order for us to be impactful as leaders, we have to sometimes unpack who we are and what we've been through. Yes. And I think a lot of times, Dan, and you probably have seen this in leadership, is a lot of times we lead with titles, we lead with accomplishments, but we don't lead with our stories. Why is it important for us as educators and leaders to lead with our stories, and how can that be the gateway or the catalyst to creating connections with students?
Well, I would say for your listeners, I think who are leading the work in education, finding your personal clarity, right, your own authenticity is a starting point for you to be successful in this work, for no other reason than the students value authenticity. They see through us, right? They want folks who care about us, and they can tell the difference between those who care and don't care. And so for me, I wanted to come out of the gate as a young teacher and just be real with students about what they were going to be up against, because I suffered through it and found my way. And so I think that's an important place for us all to begin. It informed my practice as a professional, as I mentioned to you. And so I think it's an important part for all of us as young leaders, the young leaders in our work, to just really understand their place of purpose and view that as a jumping off point in their careers.
Of course. Now, what interested you in going the educational route? Was this a dream of yours? Was this one of the goals that you had in high school, college? Or what was the story behind becoming an educator?
Well, first of all, I laugh when you say a goal of mine in college. Remember, when I can tell you what kind of student I was, college was not in my, right? I'm no way. I mean, I'm telling you, Kyle, high school was the best 5 years of my life. Let me
I love
promise you that.
it.
So I would say to you that I won't get into how I ended up getting into college eventually, but that was a long road for me. But ultimately, the only thing I was ever very good at is writing. Wow. When I was a young person, because of what I was going through in my childhood, I would spend a lot of time by myself in my room, and I started to write. And I realized that the creative writing, poetry, songs, music, all that spoke to me. So I was a pretty good writer from a young age because I had a lot of practice at it. So no, I did not go into education. I went into journalism for a little while, was a writer there. And then I realized that I was spending a lot of time coaching other people on their writing. And someone mentioned to me, there are kids who really could benefit from what you offer as a writing coach. So both wanting to serve children and the fact that writing has always been sort of my craft, area of craft. A few years later, I went back to school and got a second bachelor's degree in English and became an English teacher in high school for many, many years.
Wow. It's so many parallels in our story. One of the things that my mom would always say when I was growing up is that I was going to be a writer one day, and to journal my thoughts, journal my feelings. And as a young man growing up, I had all of these emotions and feelings that I was going through, and writing was my outlet to be able to express myself in a way that was most authentic and vulnerable. That turned into books and then podcasts and then all of the speaking engagements and all of these various things that people see today. But one of the things that I've realized, Dan, is writing doesn't seem to be as important as it is in education today, but it's a need. Can you talk about the importance of literacy, especially with this next generation?
Yeah, and I think let me just answer the kind of the elephant in the room, and that's AI, and that is going to impact writing. Mm-hmm. And as hard as it is for me to say these words, it may be the case that AI does the writing for us down the road. We have to recognize that. But I don't view writing as the full slate of literacy, right? So you have reading, you have writing, but you also have speaking, presenting, right? Debating, discussing. So I view writing as in an applied literacy sense. I think the future of literacy in our work will be applied. It will be students being able to articulate a message, whatever that form will be. So writing will always play a role because it's the way we capture our thinking so as to express, right, our common beliefs, struggles, whatever, which will probably be through the spoken word. While writing and reading was the previous civil right, probably speaking will be the new civil right. That will never leave us. And so it is the way we express ourselves. So to me, writing, both from an academic confidence building standpoint, but also a way of developing student voice, will always play a role. And I'm heavily invested in that in the workshops and trainings that I do.
Now, Dan, I've never heard this term before, applied literacy. And, as a former ELA 8th grade teacher, this is definitely something that I would love to learn more about. And I know our listeners would even love to learn more about from not just the educational side, but from a parent side. How do we produce and prepare this next generation to have expertise or mastery in applied literacy?
Yes, sir. Well, first of all, let me compare it to STEM for just a minute. And I'm an ELA guy. And so it took me a minute to really understand the value of science, technology, and engineering, those principles of STEM. That's applied science and math, right? It's taking our science and math skills and putting them to use. So I think what we've missed is this opportunity to take our school-based skills, which are very, very important, right? Fluency, vocabulary, those ideas of basic foundations of literacy, and then saying, what does that look like when I go into my community and I want to impact my neighbors and my neighborhood and my community? So my idea of expressing applied literacy is ultimately, I'm not a big fan of teaching students to be literate so they're successful in school. I want them to be literate so they're successful in life, because you know what? They might just have something they want to say. And so I think developing student voice isn't just a little phrase we toss around. It means literally, how do we develop in our schools, which we can do, by the way, Kyle, academic confidence in students, obviously, but also personal clarity, what I stand for, and my creative purpose in life. If we develop all those parts through an explicit instruction standpoint, but also an applied standpoint, we'll develop the well-rounded kids that you talk about a lot in your work.
Now, Dan, this is my favorite part of podcasting because it's an opportunity to get the highest level of information in these types of conversations. I guess the question that I'm thinking is, how do you do this? Like, how do I approach my work in a way where we can produce these well-rounded students in the way that you're talking?
Well, I think, first of all, we have to recognize that we have both of those roles, whether we like it or not. As educators, sometimes we say to ourselves, well, our job is to teach them, reading, writing, arithmetic, and it is. We should teach all students reading, writing, arithmetic at the highest levels. We can, by the way, get all students to grade level proficiency. No doubt about it. I've seen it over and over and over again. So we can do that. But we have another role, and we cannot deny that other role. And that other role, because the students need us for that other role.
Of course.
And that is, I need mentors in my life. I need somebody who shows me what the world looks like outside of school. We need to get our kids off our campuses and into our communities. So there's lots of ways we can do that. I do that in all my writings and workshops. I've kind of narrowed it down. I hate making a list, but I kind of narrow it down to about 7 to 10 things I think we need to get right to build confidence academically, which I did not have when I was a young child. Very, very important.
Yeah.
But also what I stand for, what I believe in. But there are lessons we can design to get us there, but also applied learning experiences that help develop those skills in our schools.
Now, I know you're coming out with a new book, Remarkable Learning, a guidebook for building creative and confident kids. When you think of the concept or the themes of this book, why do educators need to purchase this book right now? And what will they be able to gain from reading this book?
Well, thank you for bringing it up. I have been working on it for a couple of years now. It is coming out here in a few months through Bloomsbury Publishing, which is out of London. It is a kind of a quick read book built for practitioners. This is a book for people who work in our schools, who are on the doing on the front lines each and every day.
Yeah, of course.
And is designed to be practical in nature. And in short, it starts with a premise. The premise is that all kids are brilliant and can showcase their brilliance, literally. Okay, they're no matter your background, I'm proof of that. No matter your background, there's untapped brilliance in our schools. All students can become highly proficient and confident, in which I've already mentioned to you. I want to say back to you that we are in the confidence business. We are not in the content business. We're not just there to teach English, math, science. We are in the confidence business.
Talk a little bit more about
to teach students that academic confidence is what my book's about.
Talk a little bit more about what you mean there. And I think I understand what you mean, but I think for our listeners that are tuning in right now, you said that we're in the confidence business, not just the content business. And I love that.
So thank you. What I mean by that is that I view schooling from kindergarten through grade 12 as a process where we build throughout time over the course of 13 years student confidence in what they can do. So each year learning content isn't just so that I can be good at math and good at science and then to move on to the next grade level, but it's a series of actions and spiral curriculum design that builds in me really high degrees of, yes, literacy, mathematical reasoning, problem solving, all that sort of stuff, which is content, but it's content designed to build my academic confidence so that I can then use that again in my community, in my life. So there's ways we can build content that does that, which my book talks about, but also along the way getting to a place where over time I feel better about myself as I matriculate through the years. I don't feel less confident. I'm building more confidence as time goes on through specific actions that we do in school, which I articulate in the book.
Could you share maybe one or two things that an educator could do today or tomorrow that could help them develop this confidence, not just in students, but then also in themselves?
I'm glad you brought up themselves, because I do believe that the other part of my book is investing in teachers, believing in our teachers, and building their own personal confidence and their professional confidence, their own clarity. We read a lot about teacher clarity, what I believe in, I'm confident myself. So building their skill sets is important. An example of, being very direct about the kind of discussion, academic discourse we have in our classrooms. We know it's a research-based strategy. We know that kids learn by talking to each other, with their teacher, with their classmates, and discussing and debating content. So the idea of purposely building in quality academic discourse time is one of the things I highlight in my book. But how we do that in such a way that the kind of the opportunity to discuss and talk is now given over to me as a student, so I could have my say in the classroom in a safe way, building culture and community, as you talk a lot about. So just academic confidence is built out of conversation, discourse, writing, interaction, creative resolve, creative purpose. Now, while on the podcast today, I'm talking about this from kind of a big picture perspective.
Of course.
I do, in the book, do my best to articulate exactly what that would look like in a classroom lesson, because I want the practitioner to be able to walk away with some practical ideas.
Of course. Now, one of the things, and I'm sure you can understand this, that we're big on is words, but then also being able to define a word. One of the guests that we had on, Marco Trillo, he talked about how when he approached his school, if we all look at the word responsibility or respect, and we wrote down the word respect and we defined what it meant, we would probably have 30 different definitions of what respect looks like, and then the behaviors and how we view it and how it shows up in our classroom. When you think of confidence, Dan, how would you define that in the context of what you're discussing?
I think it's a belief that I can do something by myself without anybody's help, right? And a belief that I can take that learning and then go that next step, apply that learning, do something with that learning, that I move forward confidently, really without the need for the scaffold that is my teacher, because I know that I believe in Dan. Dan is special. Dan is skilled. Dan is smart. Dan has something to offer.
Of course.
No matter my background, no matter my no matter my race, no matter my culture, we are all one humanity in that respect. But what makes us unique is our individual belief that I can do something. And that has to be explicitly designed and built into our curriculum materials and into our pedagogy. And as you mentioned definition, I want to say something about that, which I think is a brilliant point you made. When I say something like we need to have more discourse in our classrooms, everybody says, yeah, that sounds great. But we have to agree on what that really means. So I say that when I work with schools and districts, definitionally, what do we mean by discourse in our classrooms? What do we mean by writing in our classrooms? What do we mean by applied learning? So we have to define it, definitions. 2, what is the perfect timing for that to occur? 3, what is the pacing? So the discussion doesn't go on so long that we lose learning.
Exactly.
And then what is the purpose? So I help schools and districts with the definitions, the timing, the pacing, and the purpose of their work. So it's very intentional.
Now, talk to me about when you work with schools on this work, because I think that model is absolutely phenomenal. What are some of the results that you see? What could a school expect to see if they were to approach your model from that perspective?
Well, again, I want to go back, and I didn't want to talk much about my own. I'm glad you started my personal narrative. I'd like to talk a little bit about. Thank you for that opportunity. My work narrative, folks can read about that somewhere else. But the short version of that is along my journey as a teacher for 10 years and working in a Title I school as the principal. By the way, of the school where I struggled, I became the principal of that school many, many years later, where they struggle. And then as a chief academic officer, each place along the way, first of all, I grew as an educator, but each step along that way, folks questioned, these students can't get there. We'll never reach those levels of proficiency and achievement. And in my career, I've adapted my work to try to help school districts realize that our goals are really too small. With this idea that 50% of kids or 60% of kids can be can reach achievement in something, are too small. Because in reality, in all seriousness, over and over and over again, in the work that I've done in many schools, 70, 80, 90% of kids can reach whatever your goal is if you get the right things in place. Exactly. So there are things we can do to help schools, and I do to help schools, to help them really believe that that can be done. And then what I believe in is it's co-facilitated, right? I like to work with schools or yourself or anybody who wants to get better at their craft so that you're getting better at it so that I can step away. So very specific actions, being more focused, targeted, right? I preach something called strategic restraint, right? Which means we're not going to take on too many things and do them all poorly, exactly. Which we do in education a lot. We have to have the courage to do fewer things and do them well on behalf of kids. So learning what those things are is, I think, a real skill set.
How do we learn what those things are? And the reason that I asked that question is because this requires not just buy-in, but unity across the board.
It does.
Because if I have, let's say, a school district, Dan, that we have, let's say, 3 schools and 3 different principals, and we have 3 different populations of students, and we have maybe 3 different goals. How do I understand what are those metrics or what are those things that I need to approach for my campus that still aligns with district goals?
Yeah. Very difficult to navigate. You need some seasoned leadership to help you through those, because I understand what you're asking. One is that we do need to know what really works and what just sort of works. And I'm going to go back to the research a minute. Now, obviously, we need to lean on the research. I'm a big fan of the research. I'm a big Hattie guy. But watch what I'm about to say. The research should just inform our debate. It should not decide for us what works and what doesn't. Okay. That means we're maybe too reliant, in my opinion, on the researchers who don't work in our schools. We need to know our research, but then go find the people who are making it work. That's the key to the whole thing, Kyle. The best research we have, the best solution set we have, is the great teacher down the hallway who's applying that, right? Yeah. The school down the street who's really rocking it out and getting great scores, that school down the street is not getting lucky. They're doing something well. Same with the teacher down the hallway. So I think we need to rely on the research. We have to know what we believe in. But we have to collectively, if I was in that school district, collectively bring those 3 principles together and say, who in this school district or in this grouping of schools, charter school network or whatever it happens to be, are really getting good results. And let's ask them how they're applying this research to get those results. And then let's start doing that and stop doing everything else that we think is driving learning that really is not.
That's good. Dan, I 100% agree with you when you talked earlier about, I believe that all students can get to proficiency. 100% of students.
They can.
And I believe when I taught at a failing school, that I believe my belief that those students could do that bled into them. And then they started to increase their own expectation and raise their own bar because I believed in them enough for them to start believing in themselves.
Well, I'm glad you said that, because that's why I joined your podcast, because I know of your history and your belief systems, and I totally agree.
I appreciate it. I guess my question, though, and this is where maybe you can push back on me, Dan. Mm-hmm. Do you believe that teachers can all get to 100% mastery, or teachers can get to that place that we expect them to be as leaders to be best for those students?
No, we cannot. And the reason we cannot is because they're arriving at different places. I'm not a big fan of saying something that just sounds good that we really can't pull off. We'll always have the new teacher who is going to struggle and the veteran teacher. We'll always have the new principal and the veteran principal. So that new principal who's sort of sorting out what he or she believes in and how it is to run a building kind of can frustrate the more accomplished principal or coach. Yeah. The new teacher who's sorting it out can frustrate the principal or the coach or whoever's helping. he or she out. So no, we have to design a system where we have to realize that no, not all teachers will be at the same place. So how do we scaffold their growth and their students' growth while this teacher's still learning and growing herself? That's a challenge, which is probably broader than we can discuss on the podcast today. But no, we have to admit that we're working in a system where there's a lot of turnover. And there's ways we can compensate for that, but we will always have struggling teachers who are just new to the work.
That's good. I read a book a few weeks ago, finished it, called B 2.0 by Jim Collins, and amazing perspective on leadership. And in the book, he talked about, in order for us to create great organizations, we have to at least get 90% of our teams to the point where they're operating in their zone of genius. And your role as a former leader and chief academic officer, what would be one tool or one strategy that you would use, that you would recommend using to get your leaders where they are supposed to be?
Well, first of all, I'm a big believer in building community in schools. A lot of what you talk about with the culture building,
of course,
building ecosystems. Nothing we do it should come out of luck, right? It should come as a building of a good system. So systems for collaboration in schools among professionals would be number one. I'm a big fan of professional learning communities if they're done well. Leadership communities, the idea of authentically pushing on each other, definitionally, what do we believe in? Clarity, what do we believe in? And what does that look like in a classroom so that we're all growing together? We all have a shared interest in saving every one of the students who are sitting in front of us. So I do believe you can get 80, 90, 100% of a team, teacher team or leadership team on the same page, rowing in the same direction. Absolutely. But we have to understand that newer teacher or younger assistant principal is going to need a little bit more help, and getting into their own levels of confidence and proficiency. So compensating for their struggles by having them partner with people who are more accomplished is one thing I would encourage schools to think about.
That's good. Your book, The Instructional Soul, right, which I absolutely love the title. The Instructional Soul, Leading Schools with a Spirit of Innovation. How do we do that, Dan? How do we lead schools with a spirit of innovation?
Well, first of all, I think, thank you for bringing up my previous book. I wrote that book 4 or 5 years ago. It's a little bit more of a broader look at school systems. I've had every role in a school system. And so I have a good sense of how the system is put together. So it's a systems theory book more than anything else. And so what it really talks about there is how is it that we can stay focused every minute on meeting that student's needs, right? And the way we do that, first of all, I already mentioned one, the book talks a lot about focus. Again, not taking on too many things. And that requires courage. Okay, that requires instructional courage, leadership courage. Sometimes in our industry, in most industries, we have a lot of leading going on, but not always a lot of courage. So the courage to say, no, we're not going to do that right now. The courage to align the work, which takes a little bit of effort, right? Aligning the curriculum to the training, to the pedagogy, all that behind the scenes work. So the book talks a lot about how to do that. The inspiration part of the book is, let's think much bigger than just, again, reading, writing, arithmetic. Let's think about inspiring kids, inspiring the people we work with, right? Valuing them, lifting them up. The turnover in our own profession is an industry-wide disaster. And we need to think a little bit about that. So the idea of getting us to a place where schools are forward-thinking, future-thinking, getting our kids out of our schools into our communities, which is really an easy step, or even learning outside while we're at the school building. Sometimes some big, heavy lift that doesn't have to be that way. So it really is a book meant to inspire us to think much bigger about where we can go. And then this new book that's coming out is kind of the practical step-by-step how to do that.
Dan, you could have went a lot of different ways once you went to school. You are a dynamic writer. You have the acumen, the hard work on all of these various things and tools. Why education? And why education still?
Well, first of all, I think we all know that it is the only thing that we can all rely on.
Mm.
It is society's number one asset that we can rely on to level the playing field for all children.
Mm.
And so I'm a big believer in investing in individual opportunity and possibility. And I know this sounds like true believerism, and it is. It's one of the few places, maybe the only place, where we collectively agree across our country and across our world that investing of children in a public education setting, public and private, quite frankly, investing in children is our way to service their needs and building kind of a larger kind of belief in the possibilities of human beings. And so I've always believed in education. I am a true believer. I've always believed in teachers. And to this day, it is the way that we level the playing field and build that kind of kid that we all want.
That's good. You had and you talked a little bit about this earlier, some challenges that you experienced growing up.
I did.
Who was your person or your mentor that helped you not only navigate the complexities of your career, but also define the values that you have as a man that you take into these schools, that you took into those classrooms to be able to create the impact that you have?
Well, it's interesting because my way of operating and surviving in those formative years was to isolate myself and be alone, which is where I became a writer. And I didn't open myself up to many people, and still don't, quite frankly, because that kind of hurt and trauma runs deep, and we need to understand that about our kids. But I did meet a teacher in high school. I know a lot of us have those examples. She not only believed in me, but she saw potential in me and all that. But she also didn't allow me to wallow in my own misery and blame that. She said, she would push me to lead. She would push me to do better. So I would say first, my high school teacher, Mrs. McClellan, who passed away here a couple of years ago. She pushed me to do things I never thought was possible. And then as I became an adult, really, it would be my obviously my family and my wife specifically, who again just said, put that behind you. You can do great things. And I worked and I still work very, very hard. I'm still a true believer. And that all stems from what they allowed me to believe that because of their belief in me. And I owe them a great deal of gratitude.
There's oftentimes not just parents, but students that tune in to the Contagious Culture Podcast weekly and even sometimes daily. And there's probably many students that are trying to find their path that resonate with your story. What would you say to that young high school young man or young woman that is experiencing some of the challenges or traumatic life experiences that you experienced, that's just trying to find their way and learn how to become confident in who they are?
Well, I think part of that is just understanding that those struggles help to define who you are. Those struggles ultimately can be an advantage to you, because as they have become for me, because I understand people who struggle, I understand young children. So just recognizing those things and verbalizing those frustrations, number one. Number two, I want them to know that we all struggle. Some people do it privately and never let folks know. Very few times in our lives do we see a situation where no one has struggle ever in their childhood or in their young adulthood. So understanding the struggle is part of growing. And knowing that the world out there is available to them. And they do have to become learned. They do have to understand that education is a big part of that. So I've helped many, many students in those situations understand that about themselves and chart a better course for their lives.
Do you believe that confidence comes? Do you believe that you have to be confident in order to be high achieving?
No.
Or Interesting. Talk more.
I believe you have to be high achieving to be confident. Yes, sir. Here's the reason, Kyle. Here's the deal.
Interesting.
Confidence is not a cologne. Okay. It is not something we can just sprinkle on ourselves or our kids and say, I'm so proud of you. You're doing great. You should be confident. Students they're on to us. Okay. Anybody would be. We only gain confidence by doing things well. So first we have to accomplish something, and then we all recognize, oh, wow, I'm pretty good at that. And so now I am confident. I don't think confidence precedes achievement. I think as we design schools, when we can, where all students can be highly literate and all students can excel at algebra and geometry or whatever else we want to be good at. Once we design those kind of classrooms, then students will achieve, and their achievement will build their confidence to do next thing. I think that's the right order.
What's our first step, Dan? I'm a teacher. It's day one. What's my first step?
Well, first step is to understand the student sitting in front of you, whether they're in third grade or whether they're in 11th grade, can be excellent at whatever you're teaching. They can be grade level excellent. Number one. Number two, then, show them what excellence is. The idea of models, success criteria, or some way to say, this is what excellent thinking looks like in a math classroom. This is what the right answers are. And while you didn't get the right answer, I'm going to show you how to think through the right answer. This is what great writing is. And this is what sort of great writing is. And I'm not going to let you write sort of well, but really well. So to showcase for students that there is something called excellence, and I am not going to stop until I help you get there, understand what it is, and understand the steps to get there. So setting high expectations in your classroom, both from a personal standpoint, a professional clarity standpoint, but also the routines of confidence building, which are some of the things I just described.
Now, is this in your book, Remarkable Learning?
It is.
Dan, when does it come out? How can we get copies? And what do we do next?
Well, I mean, again, I'm available to anybody, anytime. First of all, just personally and professionally. People reach out to me. I had a teacher reach out to me and say, I can't go to one of your trainings, but can you help me with this? I'm like, yeah, call me on the phone. So I'm available to help you or any school, anytime. I both do, quick phone calls or obviously come out and train your team or whatever you want me to do. Because I want to see this thing go somewhere. And I believe that we can get there. The book is due out in a few months. I don't have a release date yet. This is being recorded here in the middle of August. I expect the book will be released at the end of this calendar year, 2025, somewhere in the winter. Kyle, it's going to be released through Bloomsbury Publishing out of London, but be available through Amazon and everything. So stay tuned, and there'll be some announcement about that in the coming weeks and months.
Now, Dan, if you had 60 seconds to send a message to all educational leaders and educators in education across the world, what would you say?
Well, first of all, never lose sight of the important work that you do each and every day while you're busy with some of the accountability measures. It might be a school board meeting. It might be, a mandate coming down from on high from the state or your district. Never lose sight of the fact that our work at the end of the day is to service children and families who need us desperately. So we believe in you. I believe in you. The world needs you. And there are things you can do to build your craft so you're better at serving those folks who, this is the work that we're in collectively. We're all out there working at it across the states and across the world. So I believe in you. We believe in you. We really need you to be really good at your craft because children on the other end are counting on us.
Dan, this has been a phenomenal conversation. And I'm so thankful and am I wish that you were there when I started in education. And I've seen so many various schools that need the work that you're doing. So I'm super excited to be a part of the people that are getting your book, Remarkable Learning, towards the end of this year. And I will be the first. So let me know when it goes live so that I can get my copy. And the work that you're doing the insight that you have, and the wisdom that you just brought on this show. I am so thankful. And anybody listening right now, they want to know the same thing that I want to know. Where can we find you? How can we continue to follow up? And what's next for you in the future?
Well, thanks for having me on today. Again, I'm happy to be on any opportunity to speak to folks or any kind of podcast like this. And so it's you that I should be thanking for having the courage, quite frankly, to not just give me a voice, but to be a voice. So thank you, Kyle, for your continued leadership. I'm available on LinkedIn. I'm available on Twitter X. You'll see me there at Dr. Daniel Evans, something like that. I think is my name on Twitter. I have a website that's named after my first book, which is Instructional Soul. So my website is instructionalsoul.com, and you can reach out to me there. So I'm happy to anybody reach out to me for any purpose that is in service to children. And Kyle, look forward to our paths crossing down the road.
Anybody listening right now, remember this: the energy you bring is the culture you create. And it's your responsibility to bring that energy every single day. It's your responsibility to listen to the information, to the wisdom, to the notes that Dan Evans just gave us on this podcast episode. Whether you have to replay it, whether you have to pause it and take notes, or whether you have to reach out to him so that you can be able to be what your students require, but also what your students need. The energy you bring is the culture you create. This is another episode of the Contagious Culture Podcast. I'm your host, Kyle King. Culture is everywhere and is in anything. So make yours worth catching. We'll see you.